and I wonder if that's where she got some of these blurbs. But I mean, there were a lot of big names. So like, yeah, James Tate blurbs, Mark Dottie, Kathy Park Hong, they all blurb this. James Tate calls the poems magical. I disagree. Dottie says her poems are wide awake.
Yeah, these are sort of vague
Yeah,
things to
there's
say
yeah.
about
Oh, her poems
Babel.
are wide awake. Okay, Mark Dottie. Yeah. Yeah. What is?
That's the thing about poets. We like to say things that mean nothing
Well,
sometimes.
because we have nothing
And
to
we get
say.
away with it.
Yeah, because again, there's nothing to say and nobody cares, so you can just get
And then
away
we
with saying
praise our friends
nonsense.
because they're our friends.
Right, exactly.
Um,
The interesting blurb here that I wanted to talk about and maybe make fun of a little bit was the John Darnelly quote, or John Darnielle. Is that how you say it? Darnelly? I think it's Darnelly. Darnell. Listeners that don't know,
yeah, I don't.
he's the lead singer of the Mountain Goats.
He is.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
he wrote a few novels. I think he's written a book of poetry too. I haven't read them. I assume they're not good, but yeah, that guy's a weirdo. I saw them live once, and it was one of the weirdest fucking shows I've ever been to. Not weird because of like what they were doing or playing, but like weird because of the audience. Like the audience was like the most unusual like group of people that were like brought together by this music I had ever seen. Like it was like straight up like there was like hippies, there were like, the folk punk people, and then there were like straight up like junkies that love it because of John Darnelly's like, heroin songs essentially, shit like that. Like it was a really weird group of people that like all crammed into this shitty club in Baltimore. Shout out to the Auto Bar if anybody's listening. Shout out to the Auto Bar in Baltimore. I think it's still there. Maybe it's shut down. I think it's still there. It was the only place to go see like cool indie acts in Baltimore for a while. So anyway, John Darnelly's quote here, and this is why I want to point it out, is because this is what John Darnelly has to say in the blurb. If you're thinking about a new tattoo, may I recommend dropping your finger onto any random phrase in Heather Chrisley's new book. That's how keen her ear for the off-the-cuff aphorism is, how neatly her lines break into glistening parts. You get the impression of the Oracle of Delphi trying her hand at stand-up or jamming the broadcast of the nightly news. Chrisley's gift for welding surreal visions to living speech rhythms keeps unlocking new surprises, page after page, at least once per poem. You feel like the triple bars just lined up in the slot machine window, and you laugh or cry out. So very high praise from John Darnelly, lead singer of the Mountain Goats. He's going to make it through this if it kills him, right?
Yeah, but all the praises, like, there are great phrases in here.
What do you mean?
Like, there are wonderful individual phrases,
They're magical.
but actually says nothing of the actual poems, which I find frustrating in a review of any kind or a blurb. Like, I want a blurb to say something
Yeah, for the
other than
listeners,
it's magical.
a lot of listeners might know this, but like how the blurb industry, like how it works in the publishing industry, right? You get a contract for, your measly little like $2,500. In poetry, you probably won't even get that, right? And then they ask, well, do you know anybody that would be willing to blurb your book, right? Because they're not going to do it for you. Like they want you to do all that work while they, you know, give you very little in return, kind of stuff. This is how the industry's set up right now. So then you send it out to people. You send it out to maybe like a big chance person, somebody with a big name who may or may not get the mail in time to give you a blurb. And then they just blurb it out for friends, acquaintances. And usually it's just like a favor that's done for you by like, somebody else in the industry, somebody big that you hope could help give your book some praise and get it out there. So in this case, you got a couple big names, right? Like James Tate, Mark Dottie, huge names. I think both those guys are pretty much canonized at this point, right? That they're old enough that they're in all the contemporary anthologies put out by the canon, the canon makers, whatever you want to make,
Hmm.
say of that. But yeah. So you take blurbs with a grain of salt sometimes, because a lot of times it's just people being nice for their friends or whatever.